It has been a tough week for Kiwi icons, the Black Caps, and Baldwin Street lost titles that many thought were in the bag. But a handful of Dunedinites aren't giving up the fight on the latter just yet. As our Otago Southland reporter Timothy Brown found out, one way or another, the record for the steepest street is coming home.
Guttull's going to push for two. They've got to go. Throat's got to go to the keeper's end. He's got it. England have won the World Cup by the barest of margins.
Rules are funny things, especially when they're used to pick a winner. That's when things really can be decided by the barest of margins.
For the steepest street, they had 10 criteria. The prime one that we had to meet was that they should have a steepness over a 10-metre section. That's
Gwyn Headley, a resident of the Welsh town of Harlech, who led the charge to have Fjord Pen Lech crowned the steepest street in the world. After toppling Baldwin Street from its perch, he told Guinness World Records that he sympathised with Dunedin, but a record is a record. Figures are figures. It's inarguable. Well, enter Dunedin surveyor Toby Stoff, who says figures are as arguable as super overs and overthrows.
They're not comparing apples with apples, you know what I mean? What they have is they've got a reasonably steep street, right, but with some sections that are steeper than others, whereas we've got a steep street which is very steep over its entire width.
Now, speaking of fruit-based analogies, it sounds like sour grapes. But Mr. Stoff believes the measurement of Fjord Pen Lech was taken around a curve at the inside of the road, providing a far steeper gradient than the centre line.
So what they've done is they've just cherry-picked a particularly steep section of that street. They haven't measured it on the centre line. And if you're designing a road, like all road design manuals, when you're talking about road gradient, they refer to centre line gradient.
It sounds like a conspiracy theory, but we checked with Guinness World Records and it turns out the measurement was taken from the inside verge of the road, which is permitted within the guidelines, but is a huge disadvantage for straight roads like Baldwin Street. To demonstrate the point, Toby Stoff, who is a licensed surveyor for Clark Fortune McDonald, took the measurements of a similarly steep and curvy street in Dunedin. The gradient on the inside verge of a curve on Lancefield Street in the suburb of Balaclava across town was 33.2%, very close to Baldwin Street's previously record-holding gradient of 35%. But taken from the centre line, that gradient drops to only 26%, demonstrating his point about the new record holder in Wales. Mr. Stoff doesn't expect Guinness World Records to change their guidelines, so he proposes another solution.
They've taken something that's ours, we've got to take it back. We've got plenty of unformed legal roads that are probably being used as four-wheel drive tracks. All we'd have to do is go and metal it, seal it over a 10-metre stretch, and we get the title back.
But Otago University student Ben Russell is proposing an even simpler solution, calling on Dunedinites to show up to Baldwin Street on August the 1st with all the concrete they can find and pour it down from the top of the street to increase the gradient.
I was sick yesterday. I thought it might have been a good way to not only lift my spirits but see what the rest of the city thinks, and it came off pretty well. If you know the Hugh Grant movie, The Englishman, who went up a hill and came down a mountain, where actually in Wales they made a hill into a mountain after discovering that the hill beside their town wasn't a mountain, so they trucked a whole lot of dirt up to the top and sat it down on top until it actually became a mountain. Kind of the inspiration for how it started.
So far, 500 people on social media say they will join him, and almost 2,500 have indicated they're interested. Mr. Russell says if it's unsuccessful, he may take the opposite approach and fly to Wales to flatten their street a bit. He says only imagination and money stands in the way of Baldwin Street's glory. Enterprise Dunedin director John Christie says it's great to see just how much Baldwin Street's record means to Dunedin.
I think there's been a few good suggestions on ways that we might be able to get the title back, but I guess it's all going to come down to how much effort you have to put into getting that title. We're certainly very keen to see what the community would come up with and would certainly encourage it.
So while the title sits with the United Kingdom at the moment, just like our Black Caps, Dunedin's residents won't give it up without a fight until the last. In Dunedin, for Checkpoint, Timothy Brown.